Thank you guys for doing this. Kia, let me unmute you. Okay. So thank you guys so much for doing this panel. We're really excited about it. The reason that we thought was so important, we did an all-day seminar around launching in today's market and marketing tactics to do during COVID. But we thought it would be great to have some designers that are currently selling and working through this so that you guys can share inspiration with the other designers out there that maybe haven't launched or this is their first season. I personally had a great example growing up. My grandmother lived with me, and at 65 years old, she had decided to start her own bakery. She always wanted to own a bakery. And at 65, she was like, I'm going to do this. And like, she was the boss of our family to begin with. But then she started this bakery and became like my actual boss. And we were all terrified of her. And like the one thing about my grandma is she got polio when she was 26 and she was paralyzed from the neck down. So
wow.
she ran this entire bakery because she could move her fingers on her left hand, and she had a phone and she had a headset, and she would like call people and tell them what to do and like do everything literally from not leaving her bed. So
That's awesome.
so when I started my company, it was like, I don't have an excuse. Like I literally have no excuse watching her run this company from her bed. And then it comes into play again too, because we're all like working from home and shelter in place, and people are like, well, I can't really run a company and I can't do this. And like, it's not true, So there are so many ways that people are making things work in today's market that we thought it would be great to pull you guys in so that you guys could share with the other designers of how, what's working for you, what hasn't been working for you, give some advice. So we're super, super grateful for you guys to be here. And do you both want to just take a second and introduce yourselves, tell everyone what you do, how long you've been in business, everything, all that good stuff?
Sure.
David, why don't you go first?
Okay, cool. I am David Peck, and I have a retail/manufacturing business here in Houston, Texas. So I have a boutique where people can come in and shop off the rack, limited edition collections. But then I would say normally, but COVID aside, we're usually like 85–90% custom. So we do a ton of weddings, mother of the bride. Events are a huge business in Texas, so we do a lot of custom evening wear.
Great. And I bet you have some great stories about how you've had to pivot because of events,
yes.
the different ways.
There are no events. Yeah. So yes.
Perfect. And Kia, what about you?
Okay, my name is Kia Tomlin, and I'm from here in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And sounds like I have a similar business to David's, although we don't do custom anymore. That's how I started. But now we produce 2 collections a year, and our whole concept is helping busy women feel comfortable, confident, and beautiful all day.
Amazing. And
we have a store and we manufacture on site, which is I think what's similar to David.
Yeah, I was going to say you've got a brick and mortar.
Yes.
Yeah, which is currently closed, right? So you too have had to pivot through this.
Yes.
So I made a little just questionnaire so that everyone can see the questions that I'm going to pop up for you guys. And then we'll go back to the video. Okay. So the first question we have here is, what is one piece of advice? You know what? This is not my first question. I've got to go back to slide 1. That's our last question. Just kidding. Okay, so we're talking about today working with creative entrepreneurs and what's working for you guys. And our question 1, what are 2 things you've been doing that are showing results in your business today? Kia, you want to go first?
Okay, thank you. Okay, so like most small creative, sewers, masks. We jumped into masks, actually not intentionally. We kind of, I just decided to, do them and donate, really more so to keep my workers busy because I was paying them to sit home, and I figured if I'm going to pay you, then you're going to do some kind of good. And that just kind of, once word got out that we were donating masks, then the demand to purchase came just as the governors were starting to require them to be worn in public, and there, of course, were nowhere to be found. So we did unfortunately, amazing business for the month of April, selling masks. So I kind of relieved all fear of having to, how am I going to pay my people? So that's one thing we did, which has then kind of spawned into contract sewing. So now we're lining up contracts to sew masks for other organizations to keep money coming in. And as far as our own collection, we discounted. We usually don't do too many discounts because I'm trying not to train our customers to that. But we offered 25% off all of, like, from the time we were shelter in place, and I was kind of concerned, like, how are we going to, like, people can't shop, how are we going to get rid of this stuff? We do have online sales as well. So we did 25% off of everything plus 2 free masks. So they got the free gift plus the 25% discount, because we're concerned that after, we didn't know how long we're going to be closed down. Yeah. And if we were closed down to September, we just finished producing our spring collection. Who's going to buy that stuff? So I figured we might as well take the hit on the discount and get it out the door and worry about, fall later. So those are the 2 things that worked for us.
Very cool. Very cool. And David, how about you?
Very similarly, I guess right before the beginning of April, I saw that people were making masks, or that it was sort of becoming a thing. And I had held off at first just because I didn't want to contribute to somebody thinking that they were safer than they actually were, because I was like, we're not making N95s. But it became really clear really quickly that any sort of protection was necessary and needed. So we started making them initially just to donate, and we had come up with a design that was made out of non-woven polypropylene, which a lot of the doctors, Houston has a big medical community, which a lot of our doctors seem to really appreciate because it filters slightly better than cotton. Anyway, long story short, we did crazy in April. We did like triple our normal month, which is really kind of, I mean, considering it's all masks, it was a lot. But the background of my company is that we used to do wholesale. And so we pivoted in the past couple of years to be more direct to consumer and gone away from retail. So we were kind of able to go back to a lot of what we had done before and get a lot out fairly quickly. We don't do seasonal collections, so I didn't really have a lot of discount things to do, and I did, like you, not want to train our customers to rely on a discount. But what we did do is we did a limited collection of our pieces that were more comfortable to wear at home. We called it the Homebody Collection, and we're donating 50% of the profits of that to No Kid Hungry and the Be Strong Foundation, which didn't start out with a ton of sales, but now as the mask sales have ramped up and we've sort of remarketed and kind of our marketing to those new clients, then they've come back and started to buy like these easier, like under $100 products, which has really helped to boost sales as well.
It's really cool. So you've both kind of got into the mask business and then altered what you are currently offering your client. And it sounded like you were really successful in doing both of those.
Yeah, it worked fortunately very well, because otherwise it would have been a really tricky situation to figure out how to keep everybody on payroll and through all of this, because obviously you don't know when the end is.
Yeah, it seems like when this first hit, everyone just kind of froze. They were like, what do we do? Everything that we know is going to be gone. And then the smart people and the people that were like, I'm not going to stop. I'm going to be proactive. Like, everyone kind of found a way to continue employing their staff and to continue making things work. And like, more and more, like, you guys are then giving other designers permission to do the same, and permission to go ahead and like create a capsule collection or to offer discounts or to get into this mask business, because there was also this kind of like, you don't want to profit off of this COVID. But at the same time, people need masks.
Mm-hmm.
You're also protecting people's health and they need masks. So you are being able to provide that health for them, and it can save people's lives and help them not get infected with the virus. So kind of getting away from that into, what you're doing is amazing, and helping people and being able to keep your staff employed It sounds really great. I'm really happy that you guys took part in that. And then hopefully any designers that are on, we'll have time for Q&A at the end, but we wanted to go ahead and get through these slides. So the next question that we have will be, so what is one thing that you've tried that didn't work for your brand, and how did you pivot away from that?
Go ahead, David, you can start this one.
Oh, sure. So I would say it's not that it didn't work, it just was the timing. So we launched the Homebody collection first before we started doing the masks. And it was, we had not focused a lot on e-commerce prior to this, just because our price point is significantly high as an entry point. A couple of $1,000s for a gown is not something you're gonna just buy off the internet from a designer you don't know without having a pre-existing relationship. Even though we do have a very loyal customer base, it wasn't going to be enough revenue just from that small collection to, kind of pay everybody. So I think that was sort of like, okay, this is going a little bit slowly at first. And then the masks came in. So it wasn't that it didn't work, it was just not the right time. And now that we've sort of gone through like addressing people's immediate needs, which is I think the safety and having a mask, then we have now had this like launch of all these easy t-shirts and like things with fun sayings and things like that people are buying like crazy, which I think was working, but it was a matter of like figuring out the timing of everything.
And what I love that you did there, David, and this is what any great entrepreneur does, is like, what did you do that didn't work? And you're like, well, it kind of didn't, but then we pivoted and then it worked. So it's like, instead of like being like, well, this was a horrible idea, I don't know why I tried, and then to give up, you just pivot and you're like, okay, well, let's try this. And then you introduced it later and it worked. So any entrepreneur hits that point where like, you're like, well, this isn't working, and then you want to give up. But instead of giving up, you just kind of pivoted, introduced it later, and then it worked then, so it's just, I always preach to the designers that it's not about like a yes or no, a now or never. It's just like by staying humble and knowing that like if you're trying an avenue and it's not giving you the results, it might be the timing, and you can try it later and try different things to see what works, and not taking it as like a failure, I give up, just figuring out something else. And I love that you were like, well, not that it didn't work, it just didn't work at the time. That's awesome. So Kia, how about you?
So I guess it's a little bit similar to that concept in that when we started making the masks, I actually was we started donating them, and I could sense that like, wow, people are kind of wanting to buy these. And I was ready to kind of like, we need to make money, let's sell these. And it was actually my husband that was kind of like, whoa, like slow down, like let's, you need to think about that, because how is that going to look? Like we were talking about, like you don't want to look like you're profiteering off of a bad situation. And yes, I didn't want to look like that, but at the same time, I was like, I have people to pay that need to support their families. And so I was like, okay, we're going to wait. We're just going to donate. We're not going to worry about that. We're just going to donate. And in taking that route to donate, I guess the publicity that it generated was like more valuable than had we started just selling masks. And there was another local designer here that does menswear. After kind of the mask thing went into, started moving along in our area, he jumped into selling masks, and the backlash that he got for selling masks versus the sales that I generated after the fact, because we had donated, so many thousands before we started selling them, was like night and day. So it was, I don't know that I would like it's kind of, when the whole thing shut down, I remember in my last team meeting telling my team that like, look, I don't know what's going to happen, but I have kind of like a little bit of a good feeling about this, because I feel like we're small, we're nimble, as long as we keep open-minded. I think there's a way that we can, make something work and stay afloat. We do things in-house. We don't get materials from China. We don't wholesale. We don't rely heavily on other boutiques that are closed. So I was like, I think that we can come out of this on top, but we just need to keep an open mind and be flexible and not stuck in like, that's not what we do. So
yeah, Our situation was almost exactly the same. I held off from selling them at first because of those same reservations. Like I was like, I don't want anybody to think that we are trying to profit off of this. So it was probably a week and a half before of just donating, and we donated thousands of them before people just started asking. And so it was almost like I could legitimately respond to people asking and saying, okay, I've held off on this for so long and you guys are asking, I know you want to buy them. This is how we're going to do it. You can pre-order them. And for every mask you buy, you'll donate one. And so I think with that messaging, it really helped to make it seem like, oh, you're not just starting to make masks just to make money. You're like, and then along that, you can explain small business, like you're keeping local people employed, like all of the other stuff like that people might not go to first when they're in a crisis situation. I think it's exactly the same as your situation where the timing of it worked out really well by starting from a place of giving, and which was legitimate. And then, it ended up, we benefited from that.
Yeah, that's really great. It's just like hearing the quote failure being learning experiences for both of you and making you stronger coming out the other end. And I tell people this all the time too, like getting through this COVID and getting through the other side, every entrepreneur will be stronger. Like the huge dramatic pitfalls we used to have will now be like, we got through COVID. This is fine, So, hi, Jane. Thanks for joining us.
Hi. I'm guessing I had the time wrong.
3:30 Eastern, but that's okay. We just went through 2 of the questions.
Thought it was 3:45. I remember thinking that's a weird time, and I wrote it down. Now I can see why that was a weird time. Oh my God.
No worries. We're here.
I was available too, by the way. So sorry, guys. Hi.
Cool. So we were just running through like what both of the designers had done that didn't work, and I was just pointing out how both of them didn't be like, oh, I had a failure, and it, they both pivoted and like it wasn't working originally, and now it is later because the timing wasn't right. And I just thought that was such a key element to a successful entrepreneur, to like not take failures as like a quit time, but as a growing time.
In my experience in my own business, and also with all of hi guys, I'm Jane Hamill. If you don't know me, I'm a business coach, former clothing designer and boutique owner and wholesaler and all the things. And in my experience, it almost never works the first time.
Yeah.
Right? Like, what have you tried where you're like, well, I nailed that. That was awesome.
Yeah.
Usually you do it like you do a show, you do a trade show, you launch your website, and you're like, well, I got some response, so I think I'll keep trying.
Yeah.
People almost never buy from you the first time. It never works the first time. Like, that's just to be expected. Did you marry the first guy you dated? No.
Thank God.
So yeah, so the failures are not necessarily the failures. They're the part where it's like, oh, so here's the part where I thought that this would be like the answer, the golden bullet, golden ticket, whatever, silver bullet, all the things. And of course it's not. So this is going to lead me to the next good thing, right?
Yeah. So what you're saying is designers should almost expect a failure and to be able to pivot out of it.
Yeah. I would expect, we were talking this morning, people are like, well, you've been doing content for so long, it's easy for you. I'm like, no. Yeah, it's not hard, but I would say like 2 out of 7 of my pieces of content are actually good enough to get shared.
Yeah.
And the other 5 that I'm thinking are awesome. They don't get a big response.
Yeah.
So I don't expect to be hitting a home run a lot at all anymore. I expect to just try to get on base, try to get another, and then maybe sometimes hit it like a triple. If I hit it like a walk-off single, I'd be really happy.
So I'm going to bring us to our next question, which we've kind of already answered, but maybe some more information will come out of it. But the next question is, what are you doing differently now since we are in the midst of this chaos? And I think you guys kind of have already answered it, but is there anything else? Maybe daily routines, or how you're dealing with customer service, or anything that comes to mind that you're doing differently now than you were, say 4 or 5 months ago.
Yeah, I can talk on that. Well, one thing we're doing is, and I'm sure David probably has this too, the amount of emails from people is like through the roof about masks and this and that. So we actually, I have a college girl who had been interning me for the summers for the last couple of years. We actually employed her to just answer emails, just generic answering emails, paying attention to what people need. And that has lightened our load quite a bit. When usually we like that personal touch of doing it, but we've come up with like even generic emails that I have approved that she can send out to the 150 customers that are asking this one same question kind of thing. We also are in, like, I think all small businesses right now are just like in total cash conservation mode right now. So even though we did well, with the masks and the sales and stuff, we're sitting okay for now. We don't know what the rest of the year is going to look like. We could come out of this and nobody could want to buy clothes again. I don't know. So we're kind of just really being conscious of just kind of stockpiling that. And in doing that, we are taking some contract sewing jobs to sew, masks, scrubs, whatever, in small batches, because I don't want to overcommit, because at some point I would like to get back to doing what we like to do and what our business actually is. So we're doing that in smaller commitments that we can then, after, say we commit to doing, 5,000 masks for something. And then at the end of 5,000, I can have the ability to say, like, you know what, I don't have anything else on my plate. You could definitely use the income. We'll do 5,000 more. Or we get to 5,000. We're like, you know what, people want to shop. We want to finish our next collection. We're moving on. And then as far as our fall collection, since we didn't get to order fabric and didn't get to start producing that, what we're doing there is we've kind of looked around what fabric we have a decent amount of stockpiled fabric from over the seasons. What of the designs that we had planned can we utilize the fabric that we already have in stock in small batches and come up with something a little more creative that way, so we're not just spending more money on fabric for a collection that may never have a chance to sell or in large quantities. So that's some of the things that we're doing a little differently.
Very cool. Yeah.
Yeah, I think similarly, we've just sort of, I think what I'm conscious of is that the mask thing is here for a while, but who knows? I mean, definitely we saw even with May 1st, Texas kind of started to reopen and the demand like dramatically went down. People are still buying, but not in the same quantities that they were buying in April. So before that, I started to think, what are the things that we could do to sort of emerge from this, and how do we speak to these new customers? And can, probably we're not going to retain all of them, but if we could retain a significant percentage of them, it would be really valuable. So what we focused on is content that hopefully is helpful to them, and then sort of easy products that are at accessible price points that still remain true to our brand, even though, so I'm not trying to make a watered down version of a gown because nobody really wants that, but like, can we do a t-shirt with a funny saying or something that's really easy that kind of speaks to who we are as a company, but allows people to be engaged. And what I found is that a lot of people do really value the idea of supporting small business. And I think with that messaging and kind of engaging people, it's worked really, really well. And then we've also kind of pivoted the mask thing a little bit too, where instead of, these mass orders from lots and lots of different customers, it's companies or hair salons who are like, can I get a custom mask with my logo on it, or things like that, where we're kind of doing smaller batches, smaller runs of things for companies and looking more at corporate opportunities rather than just more and more and more individual customers.
Very cool.
What I'm noticing with my clients, they're similar to both of you guys, but also startups too, who haven't started at all or are just, in the idea phase, whatever, is it is forcing them, and I'm loving this, by the way, it is forcing them to, and forcing all of us to get hella creative.
Yeah.
I'm sure Kia, I never know.
Yeah.
Kia, I'm sorry, Kia. Okay, I'm sure Kia, it's always something in your mind, like, I should go through those old fabrics and try to get creative with those rather than just ordering new things. But you don't do it because you don't have to, right? Mm-hmm. So I think this time I'm seeing so much creative energy coming out of my people that I work with. They're doing things they never would have considered doing 6 weeks ago. They are lowering the bar of perfection, and that makes me so happy. Instead of needing the perfect photo shoot, they are allowing an iPhone, husband holding, set it on a tripod, get up there and talk to the video. They're making videos. Kia, I remember when you made your very first Facebook video. Oh my God, you hated it. And you immediately got like 3 sales. And I'm like, what's to hate about a video, right? And then you're like, I'm not sure it came from the video. I'm like, dude, it came within like 3 minutes of the video that you put up. So they're making videos, right? Remember that?
I do. I was so embarrassed, and I remember you forced me to do it, and I was so resistant. I think it took me like 2 weeks.
It was a challenge in the group, right? In the program. It was like, you got to make a video. And you just waved. I don't think you even spoke.
No. The twirl.
Yes, right. So like, you guys, nobody wants to do the things that are hard and scary. I mean, nobody wants, I don't want to have to be like, oh, you know, some of my members are leaving. I'm going to have to come up with a reason for them to stay, or something that they really want different than what I've already been doing. Like, no, I would love it if it just went smooth and nice.
Yeah.
But
nothing changed. It'd be perfect.
you know, you might get a little bored, but I could handle the boredom. I could embrace the boredom, you know?
It never happens. There's always something new, always. So
yeah, but this time I really have to say, a lot of people are finally realizing I can't rely on shows. Wholesale is maybe not the direction I want to go in. I'm all about selling online and selling marketing. So I'm enjoying it thoroughly, in the sense that they've always known, oh, I should do those things. And now they're kind of like, okay, I have to do it now. And that's a tremendous amount of growth going on there.
Yeah.
amazing. So our next question, this is my favorite question. This one is, what's one piece of advice you wish you knew when you started that you'd like to pass on to all the other designers listening today?
A very good question. Starting as in this COVID thing, or starting as in business or in life?
All of it. No.
Let's start with business and life.
Yeah. Business.
Yeah. I would say that when I first started business, I thought I needed a lot of money to do it. And I think through a lot of trial and error and a lot of really horrible growing pains, realized that yes, money is nice and it's great to have it, but it's not the answer. And in fact, it can be to your detriment to have a lot of accessible funds in the beginning. And because when we have been forced to be truly creative and to think outside the box and not come up with a ready solution is when we have been the most successful. It's when we have done the status quo because we had the funds to do it, or we felt we had the funds to do it, where it did fine, but it didn't have the same impact that what we have done that has come truly from a place of creativity and ingenuity and frankly entrepreneurialism, that it's just not the same. So I think money, looking at money as the only answer is not necessary.
I love that, David. I tell everyone, when I started Vmora, I just always got fired. I had like a waitressing job and I got fired. So I get fired from my job. I have my company and I don't know how I'm going to pay rent. And it was like, I have to make this work or I can't pay rent and buy groceries, and it makes you hungry. Like those designers that don't have a cushion, that don't have, the finances where it doesn't really matter if they sell or not. They never sell as strongly as the ones that are like, I need to sell this. So I love the hustle, and I love I'm almost grateful that I am grateful that I didn't have that kind of fallback. It was like make or break. We've got to do this. I remember I took work that probably somebody else would, and I sewed my neighbor's curtains. I let someone cut my hair and take photos. So I was their hair model. And then I did something else random and I made my rent. And I was like, okay, so I've made it this month. Next month, we're going to get ahead of it. But without that, I don't know where I would be. So a lot of people think it's the answer to oh, well, if I had a lot of money or if I had a situation where I was comfortable, but it's almost that uncomfortableness that pulls out creativity and success. So I love that.
Yeah, learning to live with discomfort is a really important life lesson.
Yeah, yeah, in life and in business. Like I
Yeah.
said, like I always just thought like, well, once I get to this point, it'll be fine and then I can relax. But then like you get to this point and your problems just get bigger and then you just have to figure those problems out. And I was just like, oh, this is owning a business. Like that's why when this whole COVID thing came, it's like, this is owning a business, you know, like things come up and you've got to work through it. So that's awesome. How about you, Kia?
So I definitely agree with David, and that you do grow from discomfort. If you're not uncomfortable, you're not really going to go anywhere. But I would say I'm a person that has always just liked to do things myself. I don't like to ask for help, which is not a good thing. So I would say, well, one, as creatives, I think a lot of us get caught up in the process of what we love to do, and kind of thinking that whole like, it's got to be perfect. Like as Jane says, it's got to be, it does not need to be perfect, but we get caught up in that perfection and kind of overlook that you have to sell this thing. And if you don't get moving and don't put it out there, and give it some wings, it doesn't mean customers are going to come just because it's awesome. So underestimating the business strategy, I think is a big problem, and that I wish I had, I guess paid more attention to that instead of the creative side.
Yeah.
And that seeking advice really from people outside of the industry, I think has been most helpful to me, because it's not always helpful to listen to the fashion choir. Sometimes you need people from the outside that can show and tell you a new and different way of doing it. I don't know that, I'm not going to say the fashion industry has all the answers, even though we're working in that industry. So yeah, I guess seeking advice outside of our little fashionable circle.
I would.
Yeah. Go ahead, David.
Oh no, I was going to just echo that. I think it was when I stopped listening to fashion people was when I finally started being successful, because I started listening to business people, and that was a huge mindset shift. Mm-hmm. Because people tell you you're supposed to be in this creative industry and it's supposed to be all these things, and you're really in business. And if you're not in business, you won't be in business. And learning to listen to people who are thinking outside the box from other, I think the fashion industry hasn't been as good. I think Jane's really good at this, but like looking at fashion entrepreneurially has not been a skill that has been widely touted, and it's a big problem, I think, because we've got a lot of artists, but not many people who know how to monetize that very well.
Yeah, that's a tricky one. When I have clients who have been like to art school, or they have like, well, I think an MFA, David, sorry, no offense. Sometimes I have to slap that out of them a little bit. You'd be like, dude, it's not just about creating it because it's blue. It's like, what is the customer going to actually buy? Mm-hmm. But to your point about it not being about the money, I think a lot of times people think, since I'm cash poor, it's just never going to get there or won't get there fast enough. And I worked with a client one time, and it was a perfect example of why this is actually not true. Not to mention things like Tommy Hilfiger's daughter started a line and that didn't work out. Like Richard Branson's, I think he started like 3 different apparel lines. None of them went. Okay, he's got enough money, right? It ain't the money. So anyway, I worked with a client, and she had a retail store, and she was always chasing her inventory. Like she wasn't managing her inventory properly. And so she couldn't, her cash flow wasn't there. Her margins weren't there. She was sort of mismanaging the business. But the only thing she could see was, I don't have enough money right now to buy the inventory I need to get the sales I need. Right. So she didn't see anything, like she wasn't convinced. I wasn't able to show her that it was the mismanagement of the business that was creating the cash shortfall. So she's like, no. So she borrows $100,000 from her grandparents, and she puts it all in, and she's all excited because now her problems are going to be solved. And 6 months later, she's in the exact same position because the basics of running a business were just not there. And so, I mean, when you're starting a business now, you guys, you have Kickstarter. Like you don't have to have 5 cents to rub together. You just need to get a couple samples and a video made. And if you can market it and get someone to help you and, get it out there, you can fund your first products, whatever. And then when you're ready to fund your second product, you can do that too. So the options for having access to money, access to being able to sell, and even if you've built an audience already, you can do a pre-sale. Like both of you guys could do a pre-sale tomorrow if you wanted.
We have. It works.
Yeah. If you need cash, you're like, let's pre-sell this and ship it in 4 weeks, and your people trust you enough to do that.
Yeah.
So yeah, it isn't the money. I mean, again, I think it's also about building an audience, having people that know you, like you, and trust you, and will continue to come back to you no matter what you sell, right? Like if David turned around tomorrow, or Kia, you both decided like, I'm selling yoga classes, okay? And David's over here selling whatever. There's going to be a certain percentage of people who buy your gowns and buy your Uptown sweats. I don't know if you don't still call it that, but still, who are going to be like, well, I'm just going to go with her. I'm going to buy whatever she's selling me. I just love her, right? So like it's not always the product. It's you, how you show up as an entrepreneur.
It's true.
Amazing.
Very true.
So I would like to open it up to questions from the audience. If anyone is bold enough to ask questions.
I missed the first part of the mask thing, but I do have a mask guide, you guys. If anybody's making masks, like you, David, and Kia, and all of us, you get asked because you've been a clothing designer, they're like, where can I get masks? And I'm like, I don't know, there's so many places. So I did put up a guide. It's totally free. It's just linking to small companies that are making masks. So David, I know you're on there. Kia, if you are still selling some masks, get on there. It's just at janehamill.com/masks. It's totally free. I'm not making masks. I don't want any part of masks. I just don't want people to keep asking me where to find masks. So I put it all up on the site, and y'all can either get listed if you want, or here, Grandma, here's where you can buy your mask, right?
You don't have any questions? All right. Questions, let's see, we've got one. Let me see. Is anyone making masks in quantities of 100 plus? Yeah, both of you guys are, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Does anyone have any questions? Maybe about being an entrepreneur or things that you're afraid of?
I would just say, in terms of if you've never mass produced something, I think it's a really good skill to know how to have in your back pocket, because it really teaches you how to be efficient, because that's where you will lose money. So if you haven't really thought through every step of the process and how it's going to work before you start doing it, it will be a nightmare and you'll just hate doing it. But I think in a weird way, masks are a really great product to start with because they're relatively simple. You can teach relatively inexperienced sewers how to make them to a high level. And so it's been a really great kind of way, I think, both from a marketing and a manufacturing standpoint, to practice communicating and manufacturing in large quantities.
And Jane, what was the website that it's Jane Hamill dash?
Jane Hamill, HAMILL.com/mask.
ILL.com/masks.
Yeah, if you go to the Jane Hamill site, you'll see at the top mask guide.
I'm just answering some of these questions via text. For getting samples made, you guys can contact me and we can do a 20-minute strategy. Both Kia and David, you guys don't make samples for other designers, right?
Yeah.
So if you guys just contact me through Vmora, I do 20-minute strategies. We can talk about getting some samples made. All right. Does anyone else have any?
There's a lot of questions in the chat that I'm seeing.
So do you guys want to pick out some of those that
Oh,
you?
is that what that is?
I think the one is, why have designers chosen to manufacture their own products instead of working with a factory? I can answer that really quickly. Houston is not a big manufacturing town traditionally. In the past 10 years that I've been here, there has been more of an attempt to create more places that manufacture. There was some children's wear manufacturing that happened here, but especially on what we do, like high-end designer gowns and things, there really wasn't anybody doing that here in Houston. There was much more available in Dallas. So when I came here, I really thought my career was over. And I didn't want to move to Houston. I didn't want to move to Texas. But it caused me to be more entrepreneurial and thinking. And so part of launching a business was actually launching a factory. And so we used to manufacture for other designers regionally and do sample making and all of that. And I've since gotten out of that because it should be its own business. It was too hard keeping it mixed with my own business and design. But that it was really out of necessity and not being able to travel to a whole bunch of different places, even Dallas, like even though it's only 5 hours away by drive, it's kind of a pain to get to, especially if you're working with samples and like trying to get stuff done quickly. So it's easier in some ways to start my own production team than it was to, and be able to train them to do exactly what I wanted them to do rather than try to find someplace that could do it.
Okay, I can answer that as well. I started by doing custom. Someone asked about how did I get started and who mentored me. I was self-taught and just kind of been sewing since I was a little girl and just figured it out. But I did custom up until a point that I decided like, oh, I might want to, actually, I think that's when I met Anna. Anna and Jane were doing a factory tour in Chicago. I somehow stumbled upon it on the internet, and I flew up to Chicago to take this factory tour because I had one dress that I wanted to have made, that I wanted to make, but I didn't want to sew it myself.
A hoodie dress?
Yeah, a sweatshirt dress, yep. And so we did the factory tour, which was awesome because it kind of really, I was terrified of factories, and it really let me see like the different scales of like big factory versus like little mom and pop grandma in the basement sewing gowns for Nordstrom's, like, and I was like, oh, okay, this is like approachable. Yeah. And so I worked with Anna and Jane actually to like learn how to produce for a factory. And I think I spent about a year with Vmora, maybe like a year and a half. I think I did 2 runs. The first run, you guys really like dragged me through it, held my hand. And then the second run, I was like, okay, just kind of be there as a resource. I'm going to do this myself. If I have any questions, if I need you to double check what I'm doing there. And then like I was off and running. And so you guys helped me find the fabric, the factory, all that good stuff. And I was having my fabric knit for me in LA. And then because I didn't have large quantities, I was having it shipped all the way across the country to New York, and which was logistically a pain in the butt, but that's just the way I had to do it. And then I think it was like 2 years into it, the mill in LA, their knitting machine broke, and they could not get the fabric finished and to New York in time for it to be produced. And I had just acquired some accounts in Europe, which was like not a lot, but it was a big deal at the time. We were like really excited. We're global. And so the factory said, look, we can't get this done. And so I called the mill and I said, you know what, when it's done or whatever you have done, just ship it to me in Pittsburgh. And I leased a warehouse space in on the rough side of town. And me and my one assistant, with our little industrial machines, we sewed all the orders and got them sent off to Europe in time. But we did not have time to finish our United States orders. This is when we were wholesaling. So we did not get our wholesale orders out for the United States, and we lost all of those accounts. And now it was maybe like 25 small boutiques, which, it wasn't Macy's, but it was, we were happy. And so since we had no money coming in, I decided that, okay, we are just going to sew what we can, little small things, and hawk it like pop-ups and trunk shows and that kind of thing. And so we did that for about a year until we could generate a little bit of enough money that we could actually buy some more fabric to have like a real collection. But in doing that process, we really enjoyed the control we had over it. We were not producing, factory minimums of styles that may have been a bust. And I've had that happen where I, design something, ordered it, had huge amounts of it that didn't sell, and actually ended up shipping it pallets full down to Houston after their after their flood. So that's what we like. But also another thing that happened when we started producing in-house and we were needing fabric, I called my factory in New York that I had been using for a few seasons, and I said, hey, would I happen to have any leftover fabric there? And he said, yeah. And he sent it back to me, and it was pallets and pallets of fabric from previous seasons that I didn't know I had, that was sitting there. It was money lost. And so that's still, I mean, I still have some of that fabric now, which we will be using for this fall collection. So seeing that amount of waste and money wasted, fabric wasted, and then having the control over it and knowing that I can do, like the way we produce now is we'll have, say we make style shirt A. We may do 5 small white shirt A, 5 medium white shirt A in those numbers. And then we sell them. If the smalls sell out, we make more smalls. If the extra smalls don't sell out, we stop making them. We haven't wasted any money. Same thing with the extra larges. So we only replenish what's sold out. And so we're not wasting it. If a style's a complete bust, we just stop making it right there and we reallocate that fabric to a different style or create something new. We've even been able to, we did a sweatshirt one time that was not quite a great seller. It was a little boxier than women wanted. And so 2 seasons later, we had this inventory of them. We cropped them all off and they sold out. They went flying out the door. So that's why we manufacture in-house.
Those are both
Yes.
great stories of like just making things work and figuring things out, and like it didn't work this way, but then it works this way and it works later. And that's awesome. I 100% know that that's why you guys have the success you have, is to be able to like find a situation and find a solution and keep going. It's awesome.
I did
Yeah,
not produce in-house ever. Just for those of you who are like, I should have my own factory now because now I kind of want to. I never did. I never made, I mean, I sewed my first samples my first season. That's it. I always had contractors. I always had factories. And I really don't love managing people. Having a retail store for all those years and a wholesale line and having reps in 5 cities and having that's more people than I want to talk to in a day. And so, if I were to do it again, I'd probably have an in-house sewing sample situation, but I would still use a factory because I like to not be in charge of everything. So I think the way they're doing it is probably preferable, but I think personal, what you like to do and how you like to work and what makes you want to show up in the morning is also important.
Yeah.
I think it also depends on too and the kind of business. I think when I started, I was trying to do this collection, because that's what the fashion people tell you. You're supposed to have this collection and diversity and wide. Yeah, it's all wrong. But that's what you're told. But I think if you're starting out and you think about a product or how you can evolve a product to sell, and you kind of work on a product or iterations of a product, then going to a factory is not that hard, and it could be less costly than starting your own factory. What we do now would be way too expensive to do in another factory. What I would be charged would be way too much, the way my business is currently. But if I were ever going to try to make something again, I would figure out how to get that one thing made by somebody else and get a really good margin. And your margins. The hard thing about having your own factory is like your margins are like, I think it's here. It's really, that's really the most difficult thing to manage, because something might take a really long time and something might be really fast, and it kind of does all equal out in the end, but you're having to think about that on top of selling and retail in a store, and like it's a lot of stuff to keep in your head.
Yeah.
All right, I have to say, I totally agree with David that when I first met you guys, I had one dress, and I would have loved to have just done that one dress. That's still our bestseller, that one dress. But when we started wholesaling, everyone was like, well, you need 16 pieces. You need 16 pieces. And so we ended up, making 16 pieces. And then the one dress has not had a change in all these years. It's the same exact dress. But everything else has been like, that didn't work. Let's make something else. That didn't work. Let's make something else. So it's grown like this and I should have just kept that one dress and just worked the heck out of that dress.
We have the one dress that still is our bestseller I've had from the very first collection. It's the dumbest, simplest, stupidest thing. We have a t-shirt like version of it, and we have a dress version, and it's still the thing. Like, I could just market that dress, and like, I would not want to make it myself. I would totally find a factory to do that.
Yeah.
Because there's no point. I would know how much it cost me. I would just reorder it when I needed it. Like, yeah.
In a gazillion colors.
Exactly. Like it, but it's funny, like it's very similar to that, because people tell you you need this collection and you need to merchandise it. It's like, nobody, you're not a department store. You don't need to merchandise it. No.
So many things going through my brain right now. I agree with you guys. 100%. I mean, I had reps in 5 cities. Each rep would come back and be like, we need to have longer sleeves. Honey, you need sleeves. This, and then the next one would be like, this is Houston, it's hot. You need sleeveless things. And then the next one would be like, no. Orange, nobody buys orange. And the next one would be like, all we need is orange. Yellow is out. Yellow is death. I'm like, Sybil, right? And so when I finally was just like, I'm just gonna design whatever the beep I want to, and like if I don't sell anything, that's gonna be okay.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, like, but trying to appease all these fashion industry people and all the reps and all the different buyers, honestly, it didn't put me in a great headspace.
Yeah, you drive yourself mad. So how did you guys all get your first sales? Jane, including you, like, how did you get your first sales? Although I feel like the industry's changed so much.
Dude, you don't want to know how I got my first sale. I opened up a store and bought inventory and spent $27,000 building out a space, renting a space. I borrowed $25,000 from my uncles. I put in my own $2,000. Woo-hoo, I was so excited. I produced a line here in Chicago, or like a line. I counted the square footage and I counted how many pieces could fit, and that's how many units I ordered. I opened up a retail store, and that was how I got my first sales. I had a party, invited everybody I knew, and I didn't know what I was doing at all, to the point of any of you who's ever worked retail or even been in a retail store. You could probably imagine that you have a back room for people to have lunch, and you have overstock or like restocking things. No, I didn't even have a back room. I didn't have an extra rack. I just ordered enough to fit in the store the day I opened, and I was done. I had no idea. I had no idea that if that sells out, you have to order more. Like, none of that went through my brain. So yeah, so I started with rent in Lincoln Park in Chicago, and sending out an invitation to my friends and family. And then I just kind of waved people down on the street. And then really, I started a mailing list as soon as I possibly could.
How about you, David? How'd you get your first sales?
So I started my business actually 10 years ago this month out of boredom, because I'd moved to Houston, and like I said, I thought my career was over, and I decided, well, I'm just going to make 5 dresses and then see if I can sell them, and maybe it'll have a charitable component or whatever, but at least I'll be busy. So I did it, and Houston's it's a good place for an entrepreneur. And I think had I stuck with it, as I had originally intended, I probably would have not gone through a lot of the stuff I've gone through, but it's all for, you learn. Anyway, I had these 5 dresses, and I designed all the prints, and I made them. They were like digital prints. It was when everyone was really into digital prints. And a couple of local boutiques saw them at a charity function, and like, oh, this is cool. And they bought them, and that's kind of how I started. So I started intending to be in wholesale, I guess. I didn't really think about selling directly myself. I think because I had been told that's not what you do. Like, I'm going to be a designer, and then you sell to stores, and I'm supposed to try to sell to Barney as well. That would not be a good idea right now. So like, you're kind of sold this idea of what it's supposed to be. But I think my initial vision of what I wanted, like, people were responding to it directly, and had I capitalized on that really early in a different way, like, or only focused on that, because we did start selling directly pretty early. But I had focused so much and time and attention and money on the wholesale part of the business that it really was to the detriment of the direct business, which now we've flipped that, and now there's no wholesale. but yeah, it was just that. It was just sort of like being in the right place, getting in front of people, not really knowing what I was doing, and stuff started selling. Because it had a personal story. Like, I think I probably had too many stories going on at the very beginning, but like I had a story about the clothes. They had in meaning and intention behind them, and I think people related to that, and that's what helped them sell.
So that's two people that didn't know what they were doing. How about you, Kia?
Oh, I had no idea. I still have no idea.
Yeah.
So all you designers that are watching, they're like, I don't know anything. That's
Yeah.
fine. Just
Yeah, no,
That's fine. Yeah, that's perfect.
I'm just glad to hear that David had similar experiences, and that like it really was kind of like people are telling you you're supposed to do it a certain way. This is how it works, but at the same time, there is no, like, I didn't feel like there was like a step-by-step instructions of this is what you do. It was very vague. And I do think that we did the best when we kind of just went rogue and we're just like, oh, screw it. We're just going to like make it happen. But my first sale was at I did a pop-up at a huge, I guess like an annual thrift, like a secondhand shop that they put together here in Pittsburgh once a year. And the organization, that National Council of Jewish Women, puts it on, and they collect clothes for the entire year. And then like for a week in October, they rent out the convention center, and it's all just thrift stuff. So they, this particular year, they actually did a little kind of section in the front of the store for new items. And Pittsburgh has this small, very small, probably not like Houston, but a very small collection of people that manufacture things. So there's like, there's a shoe designer who, you know, their prices are on par with like a Jimmy Choo, and she's based in Pittsburgh, and a handbag designer and that kind of stuff. So they gave us a little section in the front for their like VIP night, which is really the women that come to support the event. They're not they're supporting, they're donating their clothes, they're not shopping. And so we did a little pop-up up there, and I sold two dresses.
That counts. It's so fun. So does anyone else have any other questions? Looks like we've given some designers some ideas. People are saying thank you so much. They're so inspired. That's like why we did this whole event today, was just to keep you guys inspired, to show you that it's possible. Pulling in Kia and David, like, thank you guys so much, because you're living examples of like, it works, figure it out, keep moving forward. And like I shared with my grandma and her business in the beginning, it's like with my grandma, her being paralyzed and running this company, it was like she did not have anything handed to her that I didn't have myself. So it was hard, because a lot of times we look at people in business and we think, oh, well, they have this, or they have that, or they're different than me, or like they have advantages. And it's really not true. You know, like the people that are successful are the people that just decide to make it work, to move through all of these hard times, or that make these hard decisions. And, you know, they like I didn't have anything that made me have anything more than anybody else. You know, like we can all have successful businesses. It doesn't mean, you know, I don't know. Do you know what I'm saying? Like there's ways to just make things work. And we wanted to pull you guys in to show examples of you guys being in the industry and being successful, and showing that if you can do it, other people can do it too. And Jane,
can I answer this one question? I'm sorry. I think I see this one over here, and I think it's an interesting question that I think I would have liked to know. You know, it's they're asking, how many employees or contract workers do each of you have? And I think, you know, people, you know, maybe see the stuff on the website, they hear me talking, we have a factory, and, you know, like I don't have thrones of people here. Yeah. I have two, not counting myself, I have 2 full-time employees and 1 part-time. I did have another part-time that left around Christmas time, but and that's all there is. And so we also, like, we are the factory, and we also do, you know, handle other stuff. But there are essentially 3 sewers and a part-time sewer, but we're all kind of part-time sewers, and we handle the marketing, the selling, the, you know, the financial end, we do it all. But yeah, I don't have like a horde of sewers back there where I can just chill and let them do all the work. A small team and we're still getting it done.
Yeah.
How about you, David? How many employees do you have?
We have about 10, I think, is where we are right now. So I have somebody who helps with marketing and events. And when I say events, not in-store events necessarily, though that's part of it, but it's a lot of liaison with charitable institutions in Houston that we work with really closely, where we dress the chairs. And so that's sort of, it's more like business acquisition and development than it is anything. And then I have a pattern maker who's full-time, and then sort of a design assistant. I don't really know what else to call her, but she does everything from sales to making to, it's like she wears many, many hats. And then we have a couple of full-time sewers. And then with all of this, and then we have some contract people that work from home too, to make some things. And with COVID and making the masks, like I brought in a cutter that we used to have when we did wholesale. And he has been here nonstop for the past 6 weeks, cutting masks every day. And there is no way we would have been able to do that in a scalable quantity if we didn't have somebody who was a professional cutter coming in and like cutting like that many.
Yeah, no, that's great. So it's inspirational to hear, like, you guys don't have, it's not like you have 50 employees. Like,
No.
yeah, you're still sewing. Like,
Oh, yeah, I'm my own cutter. We cut. We got the 20-foot, 25-foot table. We roll it out. We got the power saw. We all pattern draft. We do have the computer equipment.
that, David, you do that, like, aren't like the CEO and the designer. Like, both of you are just, you do what's needed.
Yes.
Whatever's happening, and you just take care of it, you know?
Yeah, and I think a big part of like this whole process in the past 6 weeks is the ability to like scale quickly and then know that it may not stay there and be able to shrink back. So like the key people are the people I have, and like everyone's had to wear different hats, but then we've had to add like additional sewers and the cutter and everything to kind of get it all done. And then like, you know, like you were talking about, like even answering emails is almost a full-time job of like customer questions, or this mask doesn't fit. I'm like, how does a mask not fit? I don't get it, but okay. Is it my face? I'm like, yes, it's your face. I don't know.
It's definitely your face. Gotta work on that.
So it's like a lot of that. And so I, like in the very beginning when we first started this, I was in the weeds of making and kind of getting all of that done. And as we've sort of grown through this month, then I've been able to take on more of the like managerial type of role and the marketing and the communications and like heading that up. And then everybody has sort of found their niche within this new little organization that we've developed within the last 6 weeks of making masks and other things. But I've learned how to screen print t-shirts and now like that's a whole new skill I never thought I would need to learn, and now I know how to do that.
Amazing.
That is amazing.
I love all of this. Well, we are out of time, but this is so great. Really, thank you guys so much. Jane, do you have anything to add before we pop off? Or
No, just the message I'm hearing from you guys, and certainly I know from my business and my clients and Anna, is you think your business is going to go one way and you have a plan and you're like, you're like, oh, hell no, now it's this. And then you're like, oh, that's not right. No, back to this. So like all of our plans, it's good to have a plan. Whether you execute the plan at all, much less perfectly, doesn't really matter. The point is you have a plan, you go, and then you pivot as you go.
Yeah.
Perfect. Well, thank you, Kia. Thank you, David. Thank you, Jane.